Contrary to when you're working in directly with the DOM manipulation is the most taxing on the system. It's not the JavaScript code. So while there's a little bit of overhead for the fact that there's like a virtual DOM that's happening inside of React, the advantage is massive. One is that you're not interacting directly with the DOM, enabling you to create the same React application that will work on multiple different platforms because you're not working directly with the DOM. Beyond that, also the amount of it basically manages the amount of times things refresh on the screen, making it a lot more efficient. So with that said, the second benefit is really that idea of states and props. And the idea that comes behind it is that we really want to have components that are stupid. They don't know anything besides what's inside of them. But they don't even change things that are inside of them. We let React do all of that. And to do that, there's these two very simple concepts where properties are things that the component doesn't know could change, and state is things that the component knows could change, so it could announce React and tell it, hey, the state has changed, so React could then check if it really changed, and then if it did, re-render things and actively only re-render the things that need to. So it creates a really powerful symbiote relationship between that separation of the DOM and separation in the properties, making sure that our components are as dumb as possible and they only know what they really have to, which is basically almost nothing. Making sure that whenever someone looks into our code, it's incredibly easy to comprehend and understand because everything is modularized, componentized, and simplified. And with that said, really that is the third benefit or the third concept, which is putting everything into components. The smaller components, the better. And that's really React in a nutshell, the three main advantage points that make React an incredibly powerful framework. So let's jump right into this lecture where we'll explore arrows and also look into those three as we look into the code itself. So far throughout this chapter, we met props and we've also met state. And we saw how we use state to change the state of a component in React to make it disappear. Now let's have it reappear after a second, and in the process learn another new thing in ES6, and then wrap up really the discovery and understanding of what is the big advantage of working with React. What is that paradigm shift that really happened here that makes development on the view area so much more powerful and so much more not necessarily easy, although it is much easier once you get used to the constructs. Alright, so before we do that, I want to focus for a second on something that's called arrow functions. Now, to be able to demonstrate it, I'm just going to go ahead and create here a new variable, and I'm just going to call it, for example, dupe for duplicate. And I'm literally going to assign into that dupe of a function that will be, you've met these type of functions where you have a function and you would return, and you return A times B, and then if you wanted to call dupe, then you would do your console.log dupe, and I would send there 10, and let's say 20 or 30, and I would save it. And I would see that we would have a rendering of 300. Beautiful. And that's the way it was done in ES5. ES6 is so much more clean, and in ES6 you could do it so much easier by just getting rid of the word function, and instead of that, in between these areas, I'm going to put here an arrow, and that's literally the exact same thing inside of ES6. And in ES6 you could see we're re-rendered and we have your 300. To make things even more simple, such as situations such as this, where you really just have one line that's returning, you could literally get rid of this whole area here, and that would be equivalent. So this would basically be the props, and this is going to be the return if I didn't have the curly brackets. And if I run it again, you'll see that as it's rendered and it's done rendering, we'll have here the 300 as well. Now I want to show you a few more stuff. If you have only one property, you don't even need those round brackets. So I could say, for example, if I only had A and I want A times A, for example, and I'm going to send that right there, and I don't even need the round brackets at all. And we will have your 100 just as we would hope for it to be. So that is the basic of arrow functions. Now, arrow functions have another really cool feature that we're going to see right away inside of our portfolio, and that is inside of our change state, because what I want to do is I want to call a set timeout. And the set timeout, really what I want to happen is I want to use one of those arrow functions. And by using an arrow function, not only do I cut down the amount of code that I need to put inside of here, but I have another benefit. And that extra benefit is that this function by default will belong to whatever the this is in the scope above it, which in this case, that means this arrow function will belong to our class. So then I could literally just go into that arrow function, type my this.setState, because I'm already in my component and I don't have to worry about problems of scope. Has image, true. And what I've just done here is I made sure that after a second, our component will reappear after it has disappeared. So 1 second goes and it comes back. And there you go. Now we saw all the different ways that we could work, really all the basic ways that you could work with the native properties inside of React. And we've explored a lot of ES6 things. Now I want to talk now about the benefit of working with this way. It goes down to this beauty that is happening here in our client, where you saw that we kind of assumed it from the beginning that you have a React and you have React DOM. Now, what actually is happening is the separation has two meanings and two powerful meanings. One is that React keeps a state of itself, and it does not only directly render onto the stage, because it does not render directly into the stage. Instead of that, it has a virtual DOM, and that virtual DOM then communicates with that React DOM to deliver it to the React DOM elements deliver it to the screen. Now this extra mediary step that seems like maybe is going to be slower actually speeds up everything, because the thing that is the most slow in JavaScript is rendering on the screen. And by making sure that we have a virtual DOM, React can then manage all the things that need to change and send in only once, inject one thing into our application and update everything that needs to update, instead of us approaching and interacting directly with the DOM, which is not incredibly efficient. So that's basically it. And beyond that also, because of the separation, you'll have a lot of different ways to render React. You could render React on the server with a special plugin that would work on the server. So then you could create things on the server instead of in a browser. You could have it run on different mobile applications and different types of applications, because the library itself of that logic running is right here, while here we separated it into the logic that connects to the DOM itself, while this is our application and this is how our application relates to the DOM. And really we only have one instance where we touch the DOM, which is when we set up and configure our portfolio or whatever item that we're going to be creating. And all the rest is done inside of React. Now, React works as a tree, just like XML works as a tree, where if React notices that only this portfolio, for example, this whole portfolio didn't change, only one item changed, right? When we're clicking inside of here, only this item changed. So it's smart enough to know to only re-render that element. And all these stuff are happening behind the scene, making it a lot easier for you, because you don't ever need to worry about what's happening in the rendering process. All you have to worry about is making sure that your render is created correctly, that you're using your states, and you're using the props whenever you need to. Generally speaking, if I don't have any states, then it's assumed that you really never want to change any content inside here. And only if you have states, that means you want to change something, just as we've seen in the last few videos when we added in states. And again, you would never change a property directly, nor would you ever change a property. A property would only change outside before it's actually inserted into the component. So for example, maybe here we would have different changes inside of our client where we would want to change the different properties here, but this would have been done as a state change if we assume that things are going to change after we've created it. So that's it. That's the basics of React, and you really should, after this chapter, really feel comfortable with components and really feel comfortable in a lot of things in ES6. In this lecture, we really wrapped up the benefits and the idea and the concepts behind React.js. And with that, we concluded our theoretical chapter really in React. In the next chapter, we're going to move deep into the world of components and componentizing. So we'll see you there when we do that.